All right, so today I wanted to make a video on what I believe are the best coyote hunting calibers. And the first thing I'm going to say here is that this is specifically if you're buying a gun specifically for coyote hunting. I imagine there's a lot of guys out there that just use whatever gun they use to shoot deer with. So I'm going to preface this by saying, yeah, I'm thinking of it as if you're buying a gun specifically for coyotes. The first one on this list here, 17 HMR, I think is where what kind of hunting are you doing, right? And there's some woods to where they're never going to be taking a shot past 100 yards. In my mind, it all depends. Are you hunting open country like the prairies, or are you hunting a more wooded area? Because if you're hunting a more wooded area, my choices would be either a 17 HMR or a 22 Magnum, right? Out to 100 yards, you should have no issues, right? Especially if you're calling. But if you're going past that, right, if you're hunting on the prairies, you could easily have to take a 3, 4, 500 yard shot. Then I think it comes down to the 204 Ruger, the 223, and the 22 250. Right? Those are the big three when it comes to center fire. In my opinion, I mean, there's some other ones out there, but the tried and true are those ones, right? I mean, the 22 250 and the 204 Ruger, that's literally their bread and butter, right? That's why they exist essentially, is these more, 2, 3, 400, 500, maybe upwards of 500 yard um, varmint hunting calibers, right? And to me, it all comes down to, how much are you willing to spend, and how picky do you want to be? Because, I mean, 223 and 556, they're everywhere, right? They are everywhere. That is, of all the centerfire calibers out there, that is the most common one. So if you're looking for simplicity and availability, I'd probably just go with the 223. And this is the other thing too. The 223 gets kind of a bad rap for not being a super flat shooting caliber, and the answer to that is that it all depends. There's some higher, like the super performance varmint, like there's some of these 223 new loadings that are actually fairly flat shooting, right? A lot more flatter shooting than most of these bigger calibers. Now, again, the 204 and specifically the 2250, 22 250 out to 500 yards, those are incredibly flat shooting, right? Incredibly flat shooting. So if you want to maximize performance, I would probably go with one of those, right? 22 250 is going to pack a little bit more power. 204 is not going to have quite as much power, but again, it's still going to be plenty for a coyote. So that's basically the overview, right? In my mind, it's very simple. It's a very simple decision. The first question, like I say, you got to ask is, how far am I going to be shooting, right? Second question is, um, if it's going to be short, okay, you go with a smaller caliber, in my opinion. If not, you go with a centerfire, right? In my experience in the prairies, right, not sometimes in more wooded areas, but sometimes in some very open areas as well, I've almost never seen one that doesn't come within 100 yards. Probably 80 to 90% of the time, they will come right up to the call if you're calling them, right? Or at the very least, within 20 or 30 yards, right? Which makes it very easy, right? You put the call about 50 yards away, 50 to 100 maybe, depending on the terrain and whatnot. Most of the time, like I say, 80, 90% of the time, it's pretty easy, right? The problem is those outliers where you get one that's a straggler, or how maybe there's two and you drop the first one, or three, you drop the second one, and you got to take a 3, 400 yard shot. Maybe it's even on the run. So those are the questions you need to ask. I think the other question too is, um, do you care about the pellets, right? Because if you care about the pellets, well, the problem is that a lot of these varmint hunting bullets, like some of these fragmenting things, like the Hornady, like the SST stuff, like basically anything designed for varmints. It's a lot of times it's going to shred inside these animals, or these the coyotes, and you may get a very gnarly exit wound. Sometimes it might not even exit, right? I mean, if it hits a big enough bone, it probably just shatters on the bone, right? So that's kind of the other question that needs to be asked too, is that, do you care about the pelts? Because if you do, you almost certainly have to go with either an FMJ or a 22 Magnum, or even a 22. I mean, there's probably a ton of guys out there that have done that, especially throughout history, right? I mean, 22 may very well have killed as many coyotes as any other caliber, right? In fact, it probably has. So I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. The one thing you're going to have to be careful of, like I say, is that if you get one past 100 yards or so, you're probably going to be screwed. And even then, you're still going to have to place your shots very well with a 22. Even the 22 Magnums and the 17s, you're going to have to place your shots fairly well. That is one of the big benefits of the Centerfires, is that they are a very large step up in power, right? But in my opinion, inside a couple hundred yards, especially the 22 250 and to a slightly lesser degree the 223, they're over point, right? With a hollow point, they're easy, right? I mean, every single coyote I've ever shot with a hollow point that I called in dropped right where they stood, right? Right where they stood. Because again, you place your shots half decent, they're gonna stand, right? So that's kind of the things that I think need to be asked. There's a few very important questions. And the reason why I don't say definitively this is what you should get is everybody's situation is going to be a little bit differently. Personally, if I was hunting very up close and I knew almost for certain I was going to have a shot within 100 yards, I would go with the 22 Magnum. If I was hunting in a more open area, I'd probably just go with the 223 just because you have ammo is going to be the cheapest, easiest to find, and you're going to have the greatest opportunity of when buying guns and accessories and stuff like that. Again, that's my personal opinion. Love to hear other people's. So again, make sure you let me know what you think and stay tuned for more.